He was basically just like lurking on different like forums, just like internet forums with sometimes not very many people on them. None of what he did is outside of the realm of what most of you can do.
I would like to say something before we begin this breakdown of the development, how Expedition 33 was made. And that is, I really don't like doing this at the end.
Me neither. I agree.
I really wish we had done this as the first episode. From now on, I'm not doing this again. It feels so weird, almost awkward to be like,
oh, that's what they were going for.
Yeah, after you've like done all the talking. There are at least two big points from our like ending discussion stuff that I would have liked to have had these quotes for in support of certain points or whatever, or to bring up, or just have in mind when playing the game. I understand that there are some people out there who feel the opposite. They want to have like their experience with the thing first, then go kind of look into, okay, what were they going for?
Yeah.
I like respect and understand like that approach to how you want to engage with the thing. I just like doing it the other way better, personally.
Maybe not for yourself, but if you're going to engage in a public analysis and a commentary on the work, I would agree. Because it's funny, because the first time we played it, we didn't really have any of that. And at least on a second playthrough, it would be good, to have done more of that. We did a little bit, like we were familiar with the dev history stuff, and had some questions, and we'd done some research, but yeah, there was a lot more here that I didn't even know about.
Yeah. I'll put it this way, I guess, like, I guess to just get my biases out of the way. I know a lot of people are like much, much more sensitive to like spoilers than I am, right?
Right, yeah.
And some people feel reading what the developers' intentions were with certain things would spoil the story, even if they're not like giving away what happens. If they're saying, I was inspired by this book, and what that book is, then like you understand something maybe that you wouldn't know going in blind. Or if they say, these are the themes we're exploring, that changes the way you're viewing it while experiencing it the first time.
Yeah.
Some people don't want that. I get that. Again, totally respect that. That's not how I like to engage with it. I am not sensitive to spoilers. Spoilers mean nothing to me. Like, you could tell me the most shocking plot twist of something well before I play it, and it would have no effect on me until I understood the context behind why that's important. So, like, it wouldn't be ruined for me knowing that this event happens when learning the context behind why in this story that's even important. And that takes playing it or reading it or whatever to understand its relevance. So its impact can still be felt to me. So it's kind of the same idea for me when I understand, what they were thinking about. It's like, okay, that's going to help me understand the game better. Because there's been far too many points in my life where I went and played something blind and got all these like ideas based on misunderstandings or like this is maybe like my early 20s, like really hating something the first time I tried it. And then people explain, well, did you know this or this or this about why or what they were inspired by?
Right.
And then when I learned that, I go like, oh, actually, that's kind of cool now. Right. Like, it like changed my perspective. So that's kind of why I think I started approaching my critique of stuff with trying to understand where the developers were coming from first. Yeah. And so anyway, I don't like that we're doing this at the end is all I'm saying. And I'm never doing it this way again.
Me neither. I would say if we ever did it like this, it would be for something like Final Fantasy 16 or something where
it's like brand new.
Where it's brand new. Yeah. But we kind of waited almost a whole year to do this analysis. So.
Yeah. Okay. So there's been a lot of articles written, podcasts recorded and released.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Interviews with these developers. There are dozens, if not hundreds of sources to look into to learn the development history of this. So we're not going to try to be like totally expansive on that front necessarily, as much as we're looking for the pieces of those interviews that I think lend themselves better to us understanding where we were going with our final conversations on understanding the thematic scope and the depth of the game, and trying to extract from that what I think the developers were hoping for us to pay attention to and discuss. It's clear that they wanted this to be a passionately discussed ending. Like they achieved that end.
They definitely did, yeah.
That's exactly what they set out to do, even before the game's story, as we know it now, was the game's story. Originally, it was set in London in a totally different like setting, and had different story elements like aliens and different things like that.
Tons of things. Also, like a big clock tower, which is why I think London would have suited them well because of Big Ben. But the idea of the clock is ticking, your time is running out. In fact, that's even where the name Sandfall Interactive comes from. It comes from the hourglass, right? An hourglass that as the sand is falling, everything's running out, right? Your time is running out, basically. And the game was going to be called... what was the original title for the game? Like something
I think
about
it was called We Lost.
There it is. We Lost. The idea is that death is approaching, right? Death is coming, and it's just a matter of time.
Right.
So they were playing with that motif pretty heavily, but they found a way more interesting way to basically do that same idea years later, I guess.
Yeah.
But the original version of the game was way different.
Way different. And even then, though, they wanted to have this kind of like really difficult philosophically, I guess, like difficult to grapple with sort of like question. That left people divided on like what the right answer is, and that they would kind of debate this. Right?
And in particular, it was, I think, it was the idea that they didn't want to tell people what to think or how to act. They wanted that to be entirely up to the players. So the game doesn't pass judgment one way or the other in many, many of its scenarios as to which one is the right, technically correct ending or not.
Yeah.
Now, if they make a sequel to this game, that might undo a lot of that.
Oh,
so
we'll see. Well,
I hope whatever they do, it takes into account that fact. That, they didn't want there to be a canonically, technically right choice to make or not. They were trying as best as they could. They were trying to leave it up to the players.
Yeah. So anyway, essentially what I'm saying is there's a lot of like really cool info out there that you can extract. The writer of the game, Jennifer Yen, she's been very gracious with her time and has done a lot of podcasts and done so much explanation behind her process to writing this.
She was also graceful with her time in making this game in the first place.
Oh, sure.
Because she was in finance. And it seemed as though she was making a decent amount of money based on her degree. She had worked at NASA. She was doing high-level stuff. This is a highly intelligent person. As a matter of clarification, she was not an employee with NASA. What she did is she participated in a 2-month-long simulation in which the astronauts replicated a mission to an asteroid. Also, the universities she attended, small universities, I don't know if you've heard of them or not. The first one is Wharton, and the other one is Harvard. So, And not just in her giving interviews, but in deciding to, I want to focus more on art. And I think she was initially going to be a voice actress, but she loves books and stories. Like that is a bigger sacrifice on her part to choose to leave this whole field. She went to school. She has a degree in economics. She worked at she was in finance. She was doing all this big stuff. And no, it's not what I love. It's not what I love doing. And what she loves doing is giving us what we love having. And that's awesome. More people should do that.
Yeah. So, but what we're going to be pulling here is mostly going to be on top of giving like the basic outline of events of how this went down, extracting the parts that will help enrich sort of that discussion we've been having about the game's themes and its ending and things like that. Okay. Less so about, as always, the lore and like the world building and that kind of stuff. Not that that's not interesting, but it's just not like what we're focused on here.
Okay.
So the game really got its start back in 2019.
Yeah.
This was, of course, before the COVID pandemic happened. The game's director, and I'm terrible with French names, but I think it's Guillaume Broche.
Yeah, Guillaume Broche.
Guillaume Broche.
Yeah.
He's kind of the one who this entire idea was birthed from. It was kind of like his brainchild, so to speak. Started with him, and then he went out and recruited a bunch of people on like Reddit and stuff.
Yeah, that's wild.
Not through like formal channels.
It's so funny and different. Like he was basically just like lurking on different like forums, just like internet forums with sometimes not very many people on them. And he was just like looking for stuff. He was looking at art boards. He was just like putting feelers out there like, hey, who wants to make a game with me?
Yeah.
And it worked, right? Like he did it.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to think the way that this whole thing came together and the way that he just kind of started approaching people on random forums on the internet, and how he ended up a few years later making this huge like million selling video game that is just amazing, that everybody loves. You can do that too. Is basically what I'm saying. Like none of what he did is outside of the realm of what most of you can do. Now, I'm not saying not everyone's going to be successful at it the way that he was.
Yeah.
And he did have some background in video games. He had worked for Ubisoft, right?
He was working at Ubisoft at the time.
So he didn't have no experience. But the way that he built his team, like you think about like Ocean's 11, it's like, let's get our team built. You got the cool music playing. And he's just like sitting there messaging people on internet forums. And it's just like, hey, do you want to do a game with me? And it freaking worked. It worked. And they pulled off the heist, right? They did the impossible. I love that story. There's something about this that I think has really resonated, at least with me. That's just like, man, there's so many things that I want to do. And even multiple times throughout development where they decided like, let's stop trying to appease what we think people want. Let's just do the thing that we love. And let's just tell the stories that we want to tell. That is like basically indicative, that kind of underlines this whole game. Yeah. Basically, the whole development and its roots from the very beginning, and even this guy's time at Ubisoft, kind of not really loving his job, not feeling like he was making a difference. Anybody can do this, and everybody should try.
I agree. I think if there's anything I have taken, like the biggest point that I've taken away from reading these interviews and kind of understanding the process of how the game was made, it is just the ultimate reinforcement of how completely inept and stupid and inefficient corporations are. This guy was wasting away on the Might and Magic series, which is it has a long-standing history, but Ubisoft has turned it into more or less a mobile gacha thing that is meant to just extract as much money from people through, loot boxes and gacha systems as possible, right? The kind of slop we all detest that is infecting like big AAA, games, or has had that, in more recent times been pushing the boundaries of like what players will accept in terms of them trying to get more money out of you. I think maybe the best example of this would be so they had Shadow of Mordor, a game that I really liked.
Right.
And then they did a sequel to that, Shadow of War, based on Lord of the Rings world or whatever. And it was basically confirmed later on that game's balancing was done in such a way to make it really hard and arduous and repetitive to try to like get to a point where you can proceed without like paying for downloadable content that would help you get there faster. It's this kind of thing, right? That these big corporate studios have been trying to do to like just extract every possible dollar they can get out of things.
Yeah.
And their big excuse for why they would do that is, well, the cost of development is much, much higher, just exponentially higher than it used to be. And I think our counterpoints have been like, it doesn't need to be. And you have a system like that in which Broche is working in. You see all the potential he obviously had in terms of being able to lead teams,
right?
To direct a game that is a huge best-selling hit relegated to some gotcha mobile game, doing the like narrative on like the narrative team for that, as if it has a narrative like worth engaging with at all.
Right.
That's what this dude's job was.
Yeah.
This is the ineptitude of the corporate system to recognize talent and elevate it.
Right.
And it takes him being like, I can't freaking take this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to go just start like working on a game in my free time.
Right.
But the thing is that he wasn't really a programmer or developer per se. He didn't really understand how to like get into an engine and make a game. So he just started trying to learn Unreal Engine on YouTube. Right.
Yeah.
I have a quote here that's really funny. And this, I think, gives a lot of hope to people like me who, you know, I grew up with tools like RPG Maker or something like that, right? And I remember getting really frustrated with it because in order to make the kind of thing I actually wanted to make, it would have taken programming skills, which I did not have, never wanted to develop, and have no interest in learning at all. Maybe that will change at some point, but essentially, like I had no desire to learn that field, and therefore I had no hope of making a video game really. So like any ideas I had of wanting to make a video game died when I was pretty young because I just knew I didn't want to do that part of it.
Right.
Not to say that you couldn't, you know, be hired at a company for game writing or for some other element of design. But it's getting to a point now where a lot of these game engines are much more accessible to those who aren't necessarily like coders or something like that. He writes here, I would not be an artist without YouTube. With the internet, you can pretty much learn anything. So that's how this essentially started. He just got into Unreal Engine 4 and was trying to like figure out how it works. And he was watching tutorials and he was sort of learning this on his own time. And he kind of came up with a concept and pitched it to one of his coworkers there at Ubisoft, the second developer who had worked there previously. My phone is not unlocking here. His name is Tom Guillermin. And he wrote this on a LinkedIn post, actually, of all things, talking about the beginning of development. In 2019, I found myself casually chatting with Guillaume Broche about a side project on Unreal Engine he had started to work on. From there, I started helping him from time to time, giving a hand with game logic or blueprints. And after a particularly productive coffee break, where we discussed the specs of buffs and debuffs, like a buff debuff system for a turn-based combat prototype he was working on, he sent me all the project files so I could start working on the project. And that project's title was Sandfall.u project.
That's funny.
So that was the origins of what became their game development studio, Sandfall.
And U project, I guess, is the extension for an Unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. File.
So in addition, a lot of like the sort of concept for the story he was sort of cooking up at the time had to do with time. And so like Sandfall was sort of like a call to that. Guillermin goes on to say, it was the starting point of an incredible adventure that would lead up 6 years later to the release of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 last week. It was a long journey, but with Guillaume and Francois, so Francois Meurice, he was not a Ubisoft employee, but he was the third guy who came in to help found Sandfall Interactive, like the development studio. So the three of them were sort of like the founding members of the studio. Jennifer Yen and Lorien Testard. Jennifer Len's the lead writer, and Lorien Testard's the composer of the soundtrack.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And the five of them is what he calls the kickoff team. So sort of like the core developers who sort of like got this thing off the ground and got it started. And later, a full team of talented and dedicated people. I was hopeful we would manage to release at least something that we would hopefully have a chance to be proud of. Of course, ended up being something much even more than that, I would think. way beyond what they had hoped or dreamed of being able to.
Sorry.
I gotta get this thing situated to where it actually stays in. Anyway, far beyond what they had hoped or dreamed of being able to accomplish. So there's an interview with Francois Maurice. The fact that his name is Francois, I'm sure that the character in the game was named after him. The story behind it is, at first, there was a solo project from Guillaume Broche, our game director. In early 2019, he was working at another company, Ubisoft, that was more on the producing and creative side, and he wasn't even a dev in the first place. So in early 2019, he opened Unreal Engine and tried to learn how it works. He saved the file name like sample U project. It was Sandfall U project. And that's actually the same file that the game will ship on. So they used the same file all the way through the game's development from the start.
That's funny because they did switch over about halfway through from Unreal 4 to Unreal Engine 5.
Yes.
But I guess there's a way to just kind of carry all of the assets of the project over.
They were updating with each version of Unreal Engine that would get updated. They would then update it to the next one. And then when Unreal Engine 5 came out... But the file extension
never changed.
Yeah, when Unreal Engine 5 came out, they just went into that.
Yeah.
So that workflow, I'm sure, was built to be able to import current Unreal Engine 4 projects into to use it instead. So anyway... at the time, he wasn't expecting anything to become like what it actually became. But after spending some time working on it, more people came to work together on the project, which became a team and a company. It grew bigger and bigger. When Guillaume told me about the project in 2020, I was expecting a release a year after with a team of maybe 5 people. So that's where kind of their initial idea was about the London thing. Like it was, that's what he was talking about. There's what he was expecting to come out.
We'll just put it out. It'll, you know.
And then they got convinced to think way bigger than that.
Yeah, that's right.
By investors who eventually bought into it. But, and so then development carried out for a few more years after that as they expanded the idea. It's quite a fun story how the project became a huge project for a new studio, but the vision was quite clear still from early on. We're really grateful, super happy, and proud to see what it has become today. So getting into Broche's ideas for the kind of game he wanted to make right off the bat, you know, when he was just working on it as a solo project in his free time in 2019. He says, I'm a very big fan of turn-based games, and I was deeply lacking something that had high-fidelity graphics. So this is something that people have been sticklers on a little bit on this point. People will say things like, oh, you know, finally they're going back and making a game in the vein of the turn-based games we grew up with as kids in the PS1, PS2, Super Nintendo era. And a lot of people will be like, oh, you're just casual RPG fans. They've been making games like this all through this entire time. You know,
like Trails of Cold Steel. And
missing the point, I think, a little bit, right?
Yes, totally.
The point is that Final Fantasy VII was essentially the first true AAA video game ever made of a budget that was just ridiculous for its time. And and that broke through. And there was a time where making that style of game was kind of like you had real hopes that could have mainstream success.
Right.
That became not true as you moved later into the PS2 and especially into the PS3 era. Those became much more niche again. And so they did not have AAA budgets or anything that resembled like the best that the tech had to offer in terms of graphical fidelity and power. Those games tended to be niche projects that had a certain level of success, but definitely did not have the budgets that the Call of Duties of the world had. And this is further proven by the fact that Final Fantasy, which created this entire AAA space to begin with, stopped being a turn-based game and was one of the few that would have AAA budgets behind it, but stopped being turn-based. That started moving more towards action combat and action systems because they thought that's what the mainstream audience will buy. So there was certainly a pivot where the thought was turn-based games can't be mainstream anymore. So mainstream, the biggest of the biggest budgets, the stuff that's pushing the tech to its furthest limits, we're not going to risk those kinds of budgets on a turn-based game anymore. That's what he's talking about here. And he does specifically talk about Lost Odyssey. He felt like was one of the last games that attempted something like that. It had the backing of Microsoft.
Right.
And it was an exclusive to the Xbox 360 and was not a big seller. Right. And you didn't see a lot of games after that that were kind of pushing that sort of like realistic high fidelity look with a turn-based combat system. It just kind of disappeared. That doesn't mean that turn-based combat games weren't being made or that there weren't a lot of them or that they weren't very good. I mean, the Persona games are great games, obviously.
Yeah, but they use like their look. It's got a very anime aesthetic. Like the games that have carried this torch on are games that do have a very specific, a very particular graphic style that isn't necessarily like what Clair Obscur is. It's not focused more on the realism. It's more on the
style,
like an anime style. Yeah, it's very highly stylized. And so maybe that would be it too. Who could have pulled off a super extremely realistic type of turn-based game? Well, it's Square Enix or nobody, right? Because nobody else can produce a game that's that, the spectacle is that super beautiful, not just from a stylized point, but from a realism point. Now, we've talked a lot about how like realism isn't the end-all be-all. Right?
I definitely don't feel that way.
Yeah, like I think the anime aesthetic is wonderful, but there's other ways that you can make really cool stylized visuals that look poppy and have that spectacle without just being as realistic as possible. And even Clair Obscur isn't perfectly realistic. No. Like there's just crazy fantastical aspects happening here, but the people look quite good. And the environments look more or less realistic. So often I think that's also what people mean, where they're like, no, but it has to like look real, like motion capture and like, all that stuff. And that kind of turn-based system hasn't really happened in a while. I'm like, okay, I see that. I don't know if I even agree with the critique either, but there's something to it that for some reason Squaresoft made Final Fantasy X, possibly their best-selling game ever, and never made another turn-based game after that. Yeah. And it's like, wait, why did that happen? Why were they on this upwards trajectory? You had FF7, big success, FF10, huge success, and then they didn't even let it die out its own. They kind of just they kind of moved along without even making a turn-based game for people to not buy. Right? They just abandoned it. I don't know. Yeah, it always would make you wonder, like, well, what would have happened if FF12 or 11 or 13 was turn-based? We'll never know. But only a few companies could have pulled it off to that level, and they just stopped doing it. Yeah, that's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, and of course,
there's been a desire for it.
Final Fantasy 12 and 13 have elements of the command-based menus, but what we're talking about is strictly like turn-based, right? Yeah. Like these did not really incorporate that unless you switched Final Fantasy 12, you could like essentially do that if you switched it to wait instead of like real time, where it pauses every time
for each character.
But I don't think the game is meant to be played like that at all.
Would be
it would take forever.
Awful way to play it, actually.
You'd be constantly stopping.
Yeah, it wasn't programmed for that.
But hopefully people understand the point here. Also, I don't think Broche's point here is that there haven't been really great turn-based games since Lost Odyssey. He lists the Persona series as being a huge influence for this game. So he's what he's saying is, I think at the core, there was a belief at the time he was thinking about making this game that you cannot make a turn-based combat system into a mainstream success that would merit the kind of like time and effort and money and graphical fidelity to justify pushing that with something that would look like it rivals all the most exciting things mainstream gamers are interested in that year.
Right.
Whether it's like Resident Evil 9 this year or The Witcher 3 when it came out or whatever.
Yeah.
Were like super huge mainstream successes, and Cyberpunk and like all these other types of games that are going for that. He, I think, rightfully concluded the industry has decided turn-based games can't be in that camp.
Right.
And I want to prove them wrong, was the idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully that clears that up.
I like it. But there's another part of this too, which was that when he first, had the game in that playable state and they were kind of looking at it to see what needed to be changed and what else they could do, he kind of decided himself that straight up turn-based was kind of boring, right? He was like, it needs something else. And there was another game he was playing at the time, Sekiro. That's what it was called. Because I was like, it wasn't Dark Souls, but it was something.
It's same company.
Yeah. And he was like, man, these dodge mechanics, the, reading the tells and being able to actually parry and all the different things that you could do within this game. There's got to be a way I could merge these two. And but it's funny to note that even for him, he was like, look, I want to bring turn-based back, but even I have to admit, within the turn-based system he had made, like straight up turn-based was kind of boring. You got to add some flavor to it. And so that's what kind of drove him in that direction.
Yeah, I have some quotes about his decisions on that here. I'm going to go back to this one real quick, though. I'm a very big fan of turn-based games. I was deeply lacking something that had high-fidelity graphics. He mentioned the likes of Persona and Octopath Traveler as stylish and nostalgic alternatives.
Yeah.
And he said, if nobody wants to do what he's talking about, I will do it. That's how it started. I don't believe for a second that turn-based combat is dead or that people don't like turn-based games anymore. I think this game can show that, and there's still a big community. Finally, a turn-based game with this style of graphics, with these kinds of graphics, right? Now, I guess I want to touch on just like my opinion about whether it's important to have a turn-based game with graphics like this. I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. Personally, it doesn't move me at all. Like, I don't really care about high-fidelity graphics in this day and age.
Right.
I think we've gotten to a point where there's sort of a diminishing returns aspect to like chasing further and further realism in games.
Yeah.
That to me is not impressive anymore like it was growing up, going from 16 to 32, 64-bit, and then into the HD era.
Yeah.
It's like since like I first saw a game in HD on an HD television and like the realistic lighting and shadows all happening in real time, a PS3 kind of era, it's like I stopped being like thoroughly impressed
after that,
by graphics leaps after that. It's not to say that there haven't been, because they have gotten a lot better.
Sure.
Like, certainly. It's just that I'm less and less impressed by it.
Yeah.
And I'm more and more impressed by really solid art direction.
Right.
And by games that have a very unique style that is all their own. Because, as we've talked about going back all the way to the beginning of the origins of this podcast, 2016, we think that whatever feels like hyper-realistic in any given year will feel outdated in a decade or longer.
That's totally true.
But games that have a more stylized look can look great forever.
Yeah.
And I really hold to that. I feel like that's not to say that there shouldn't be, or that I don't appreciate games that go for realism, right? Like I think The Witcher 3 looks phenomenal.
That's true.
And it's certainly outdated by games coming out today. But like, I still think it looks great, even though it's going for that realistic aesthetic, because it has strong art direction. Right. So like, that's really the more important underlying thing than are they trying to make the game look real, or are they trying to make the game look like an anime or something like that?
This reminds me. Remember the game Heavy Rain?
Yes.
On the PS3?
Yeah.
I should go back and look at that.
Oh,
because
yeah.
At the time, I remember thinking this looks freaking real. And I wonder if it still would.
I think it's still pretty impressive, but like certainly it's lost its like wow factor.
Oh, absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's just it's inevitable.
Yeah.
When you're chasing that.
It has to happen.
And so like generally I would appreciate a game that goes for something more highly stylized.
Yeah. And Clair Obscur kind of does both. Right?
It does to a certain degree, yes. And I think that I would have, this is just my personal opinion, based on now knowing like what the world of Expedition 33 is, I would have liked to have seen something that looks more like a painting.
Oh,
like
sure.
a painting come to life.
Oh, very interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
That then goes into something realistic when she's outside of the canvas.
That's very interesting. I
That
wonder
being
what that would
said,
have been like.
that being said, I don't think they could have done that.
Yeah.
With the scope and the money they actually had for development.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole reason he started like working in Unreal Engine was because he didn't really think any of these other options were something he could realistically do as someone who didn't have that background, right? And with a small team, is like, we're going to use something that's very user-friendly in Unreal Engine, something that someone who's not necessarily doesn't have years and years of experience as a developer can learn, right?
Yeah.
And so like they had a small team, they eventually brought in an art director, but I'm sure that what I'm describing probably wasn't even an option given the budget.
That's probably true.
Right?
Yeah.
So that being the case, I'm not like critiquing it for this.
I didn't even think of that, but you're
I'm
right.
saying if in Mike's optimal universe, like the option would have been available to make Expedition 33 for the bulk of the game look like a painting come to life until you like leave that canvas and then like Alicia, Mael, and like Clea or whatever are talking, and it's like that looks like a real life world, like in the real world.
Right.
But then going back in the canvas, it turns back into like a painting come to life again. That could have been really cool, right? That would have like really reinforced, I think, some things in the game. But that I'm also acknowledging I don't think that was even an option given their budget.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something there?
I think I was, and I just don't. I don't remember. Oh, I was going to say that the majority of the people who they brought on either had no programming experience, just graduated from college, or were considered like junior level programmers from other companies when they put out the notice. When they finally started, they got more investors, like and they expanded.
The team out.
Yeah, after Kepler signed on, then all right, we hired more people, and they hired people who were passionate and ambitious, but not always the most experienced, not always, but they were passionate, right?
Yes.
And that was more important to him. But that also maybe would preclude them from having done anything like super crazy in terms of that, right? Something that would require some like serious technical like programming expertise in order to pull off something like what that Zelda game Skyward Sword. They did that Cezanne style painting where the fall off distance looked like a Cezanne painting. That would have been super cool. But you, I don't know, Unreal, you already have the constraints of the engine, but then you also have the further constraints of lack of experience. But that's all made up for by the fact that these are all passionate, creative, like intelligent, wonderful people. And so it's like, boom, like play to your strengths. But you're right that one may have been out of reach. But if whatever they do after this, that would certainly be within reach.
Yeah. So a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, further making the point that these people are passionate but like less experienced developers who would have had no shot at doing the kinds of things that they did on this game at Ubisoft or at some AAA studio, because corporations are horrible at recognizing actual, legitimately good talent and elevating it. They're freaking horrible at it.
The bigger a corporation gets, the harder it is to realize like what you have.
What's important is not whether or not a person knows how to do something already. It's whether or not they are driven enough, they are on board with the vision enough to learn it and to really dedicate themselves to it.
Right.
Those are the people you want to hire and elevate.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter your experience as long as a person is willing to learn and they're willing to put in everything they have into it because they love the idea. That's how you make games. That's how you make anything. And do it well.
Yeah.
It's not about going out and finding like the most experienced, the person with the longest credit list in their resume or whatever, who's been an executive for years or something like that. Anyway, but he says from the beginning, like, we wanted it to be a high fidelity sort of game. So I don't think there was even in their minds the idea of making it look like a painting. They wanted it to be a high fidelity graphics thing. So anyway, I guess that's what I wanted to return to. So my personal preference would have rather seen that. But that's not necessarily the preference of like the mainstream gaming audience.
Yes, part of why I think this game's so successful.
Yeah, if you're gonna put something up at a big like event that's sort of like a trailer running against other AAA trailers, will a game like I'm describing be the one that like captures people and becomes like a 10 million plus seller? Again, I'm not saying that was necessarily what was in their minds with this.
No, I think they were quite surprised by the success of this game.
I don't think that they were necessarily thinking we're going to be a 10 million seller, or that was even their goal. As much as I do think that was in his brain from the beginning. The AAA space abandoned this type of game. I want to show you can make this type of game in that space. I want to show something up against theirs that is comparable to what they're doing, but has this turn-based combat in it to help you understand people still really like this. So that was the intended sort of like aesthetic for the game from the start. Okay, so 2020 hits, and he's at home like everybody else, working from home at that point, right? Still at Ubisoft. But as he's working on this side project, he starts reaching out to people on Reddit and other random forums online. And he's building a prototype, like a demo, more or less, that he's going to kind of use to show people. He wants to get some acting talent.
Right.
Anyone want to come record for free for my little demo? And can I find someone to do some music for me for this little thing I'm doing, for this little demo I'm making? And this is how Jennifer Yen came on board. She was originally, she auditioned she was cast for 2 of the voices, actually, for this demo. And then the composer was also kind of found in this way. He heard one of his songs on SoundCloud. Was like, I really like this guy's style. I want to see if he'll be willing to come on board. I
heard there was like this small forum too, this small like French forum where he posted, hey, who wants to work on music with me? And then just a couple hours later, the composer saw it, and this was small time French forum, and he just was like, hey, I'll do it. But that it was just kind of a crazy 1 in a million chances kind of meeting that this would happen right then. And once again, that music composer never composed for a game before.
Nope.
Never. But liked games and self-taught musician, right? Like I'm noticing a theme here. Like they're not just bringing back an aesthetic of games that kids liked in the 90s. They're also bringing back kind of the way that games were made in the 90s, which was young, less experienced people, but passionate, going out, teaching themselves how to do it, and then just doing it.
Yeah.
We've told that story several times with the development of many of these games from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
That's like the key right there.
Yeah.
It's not just that, like, it would be one thing for Final Fantasy 17 to be like, oh, we're going to return back to the 90s. It's like, okay, great. But they're making it with 1,000 people and, however they do it. This is how games used to be made, not just
the style,
not just the style.
Yeah.
It's they actually like put it into practice. I don't know. I think it's wonderful. Small team.
I totally agree. I think there's a spirit behind developing a game in that way. Again, small size team, lots of constraints. Obviously, there weren't as many constraints on them in the end because they did get a publisher. They did get some investment and they were able to expand their scope.
Yeah.
But they originally operating on the idea, we're going to make this with 5 people and try to release it in a year.
In 1 year,
And so we're going to make something at the scope at which that's realistic. Yeah. And that was enough to impress enough people.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, think bigger than that. We'll give you some more time.
Right.
And then it went, and this is the other point that's been contentious, is Expedition 33 a indie game? It's been talked about even by the developers in that way.
Yeah.
And I would say this, because I mean, I'm on the record very recently of saying it's not an indie game. It did not deserve any Indie Game of the Year awards because it became a AA game. It started as an indie game.
Right.
Its original concept, its original core team, they were approaching it as an indie game. It was going to be that. And then they showed it off, and it was like, you should go bigger than indie. And was backed by a publisher and was a $10 million budget is small in the AAA space, but it's way bigger than like what we would normally consider indie.
People in their basement or garage just kind of making a game with friends.
Also, if it's funded by not you, it is by definition not an indie game because it's not independently published or funded.
Right.
It's funded by outside sources.
Yeah.
So it's not an indie game at that point, but it started out that way. So it was made in the spirit of an indie game. So I think there's elements of that are true, but just they got, I don't want to say lucky is the term necessarily. There is a certain amount of luck, but obviously they impressed these investors with their work. I mean, that's not luck. That's hard work and effort.
Yeah. That's
but, you know,
you make your own luck.
A lot of times convincing someone to take a risk on you is about just finding the right person, getting in the right room with the right person, with the right fit. They see something in you.
A lot of that happens for this game.
Yeah. And
like
that's,
multiple times.
That involves some luck is really what I'm getting at.
Okay. It almost harkens back to Sakaguchi meeting Uematsu at an intersection and just being like, hey, do you want to make a game with me? The whole forum thing. It's like an internet cyber version of that same type of story.
Exactly. Here's another quote from Brochure. We're definitely not hiding that these are influences from the big Japanese genre. Actually, I wouldn't say that Persona is the biggest influence on what we do. I don't hide my love for games like Final Fantasy 8, 9, and 10, like that era. Those are his kind of like three favorites.
8, 9, and 10.
That's he doesn't mention 7, which is, I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know him.
It's interesting.
But it's just interesting. I think a lot of the core of the game definitely takes inspiration from that. Not directly. It's not like we take it from the games. The game is more like what I grew up with and kind of built my creative tastes on. So I would say we take a lot of influence from them, but not directly trying to pick things from them. And on the Persona side, we definitely took a lot of the look of what they were doing in terms of like camera movements and menus.
Yeah, the drama and a lot of the style. I feel that.
How everything interacts or everything has been created dynamically, trying to do something that has that dynamic feel, but is more like our own thing in a way. Because also we have a very different art style. We just wanted to do it in our own way. There was one more point I wanted to make about the style, the art style, right? This is another thing that we've talked about pretty recently in the history of JRPGs, episode 1 that we did. Hopefully second episode will come semi soon. You can't really divorce the JRPG from anime. It's like it grew from it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like
true.
People talk about, and this gets a lot of people who are very into the anime JRPG scene really riled up when you get these like mainstream gamers now coming in saying this is the best game of this style that has been made in years and years and years, going all the way back to when I played FF7 as a kid and like never played anything in between that. It's a big meme for people to basically have a little graph that says like Final Fantasy 7,
nothing.
Persona 5, and Expedition 33, nothing in between.
Nothing in between.
Right. People use that as like a meme as part of this argument that like casual fans of this style of game are just unaware of the wealth of great titles that have been released. Now, there is truth to that.
There is truth to that, and I love them for being passionate about that. And once people relearn that, turn-based RPGs are cool, turn-based is fun, there's a whole catalog for them to now go back and explore through your efforts of evangelizing your favorite JRPGs. But don't be a jerk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they feel like, and they're right, these guys are coming into these discussions about Expedition 33 and
noobs. It's the whole noob
lauding
thing.
It and hyping it up so much and using it to downplay other RPGs that are more in line with that like anime route that they don't like the style of. Where they talk about how bad Persona is and how good Expedition 33 is, or how bad Xenoblade is and how good Expedition 33 is.
Well, that's it. That's the opposite problem. It's a problem both ways, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's so irritating to read people talking in this way.
Anyone who says that Persona's bad, I'm just like, okay. My brain just turns off, and I'm just
endlessly frustrating to be a near 40-year-old watching people talk about games who are probably in their early
Younger.
20s or teenagers or whatever.
It's not their fault. They weren't alive for a lot of these.
But the thing is, I have to remember I did the same stupid stuff back on the Pure Volume forums, talking about punk bands back in the day, right? Like I had the same stupid arguments.
Me too.
So like I have to have some level of like patience and like goodwill to like these people are younger than me by a lot, and they'll figure it out. But what I'm trying to say is I understand both the frustrations of people who might have like really latched onto one of those PlayStation Final Fantasy games and been like, man, this is great. And then felt like JRPGs weren't doing that anymore for years and years and years.
Because they just didn't know.
Yeah.
It's not their fault, you know?
It's true that Final Fantasy stopped doing it. But that's like their whole view of like what JRPGs are. You know what I mean?
Blinders.
It's like I played Final Fantasy and I loved that game, but then they stopped making games like that.
Yes.
Final Fantasy did stop making games like that.
It's true.
But there were lots of other studios that kept making games like that that you just don't know about.
They just didn't have the marketing bucks, right? When you went to Blockbuster, those weren't the big ones that you saw when you went to rent a game. In the early 2000s, right?
Yes.
Those were the ones you didn't see as many commercials for on TV. And people just don't know what they don't know. They would just assume, they don't make games like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know? Just that seemed true enough 20 years ago.
So they roll in here being like, finally, this French team makes a Japanese RPG better than any Japanese developers making.
That sentence might grate me a little bit.
That pisses off the big like anime weebs who have been playing lots of games like that over the years.
But this is your opportunity. This is your chance to educate people.
Now the tribal...
Don't turn them against you.
The tribal war is beginning and immediately ruining all discourse on this game. It's now no longer about like the merits of Expedition 33 and about defending the games that they think merit the same level of success and recognition as this game has gotten, but that everyone ignores because it's an anime game. Like there's still very much, I think, a sentiment from the mainstream audience towards anime games that those are dweeby, stupid anime games.
Yes.
And for the people who love them and who see something more in them, that's a very frustrating thing.
Yeah, they probably have to deal with that quite a lot.
So I say all of that. I like lay all of that out to say that I don't. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, as we talked about in our History of JRPG series, you can't make a JRPG without anime being at the root of it, because that's what it was born from. We talked about the creators of Dragon Quest. Akira Toriyama, who was the creator of the anime Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, being the artist for that, being like the first JRPG that exploded in popularity.
Yeah, Shonen Jump, like that connection there.
Yeah, Yuji Horii, who was the creator of Dragon Quest, worked at Shonen Jump, which was like an anime magazine that would feature different manga stories and things like that. He wrote for that magazine. And that everything that took off after that in terms of the birth of this genre was born from that.
Yeah.
That was the style, aesthetic, and even the writing style, the types of stories, the shonen style was what like birthed that whole genre. So if there are people out there who feel like you can't say that Expedition 33 is returning to the roots of the JRPG genre and like doing it better than everyone else, if it doesn't have that somewhere in its DNA and identity, I think that is a completely valid point.
Sure.
So I just want to say, like, if you're not into the way the game looks and you don't want a JRPG with like realism as its core aesthetic, I think that's like a perfectly viable opinion to have. I also think that it's really cool that a game made in that style in almost every other aspect is able to make it in the mainstream because a French studio took like the basic gameplay foundations and some of the storytelling tropes, but then put this Western sort of aesthetic and spin on it and made it their own.
Right.
I think that's also very cool.
So do you consider Expedition 33 to be a JRPG?
No.
Because I don't either.
No, I don't.
I don't either.
I would not call it that.
Yeah, I would say you could tongue-in-cheek say like, wow, Clair Obscur just outshone the Japanese at their own game. Like there's something like that. If it's done in a spirit of healthy rivalry, as like, come on, Japan, like get up, Final Fantasy 17, like do what they're doing. They're stealing your mantle. Take it back. That's fine. But if it's done to just denigrate and to just be like, you guys are dumb. You've lost. Your anime dweebs are stupid. The real future is Western French. We're taking like that's. I don't know. That's a different kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally don't like that.
But I remember this back like 20 years ago. Remember email chains? Do you remember email chains? That was the social media of our day back when we were in high school and junior high. But I remember one of them came by and it was just like, we're in the weirdest upside down world. The best rapper is white because it's Eminem. The tallest basketball player was Yao Ming, who's Chinese. The best golfer was Tiger Woods, who's black. And it's like, oh, everything's upside down. We're living in an upside down world. This is kind of like one of those where it's like the best JRPG was made by French people. Like it's almost like something that you would slide into that spot just to kind of like prove a point. Like the world is becoming interconnected and things like don't make sense anymore. But not as like a serious... not as like a serious dig at Japanese culture or Japanese gaming companies either. It's just interesting to note that what Japanese companies have kind of dropped off a little bit, let's say at least at the fervent, the strength and the energy with which they were pushing those JRPGs, they have kind of eased off the gas pedal on that, and somebody else is revving up the engine. It's interesting enough to point out.
Yeah.
But it can be sensitive.
I think I prefer to look at it this way. Japanese RPGs lost, I should say the developers of those games, lost confidence in themselves at a certain point.
I think that makes sense. Yeah,
especially in the AAA space. Where they started thinking they had to start chasing Western trends.
Yes.
And part of this is because the Japanese market is a lot smaller than the Western market.
It is smaller, and Japan, though, they've been chasing Western trends for 200 years. So this isn't a new thing that just started happening. It's something that has been happening for a while.
And people who appreciate like the fundamental Japaneseness of their culture in their media, of course, would be sad to see them like slowly but surely abandoning those things to try to chase what they think will sell better to Western audiences. Yeah. I would sympathize and agree with that sentiment.
Me too.
To like a huge extent, right? So I don't look at it as these guys showed up the Japanese developers as much as they hopefully can restore confidence in a game style that made them a worldwide global phenomenon, at least within the RPG realm we're talking about. Yeah. Obviously, platformers and Sonic and Mario and stuff have always been huge hits. And they have other, Capcom with arcade games. And I'm not talking about like that stuff. I'm talking about within RPGs.
Yeah, this specific
within
genre.
This specific kind of like genre we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I feel like the Japanese developers of RPGs had sort of lost confidence in themselves. And thought, we can't make these style of games and be a global hit. We have to do what those Western people like. Yeah. And have more and more been like thinking along those lines. And I think what Expedition 33 has shown is that you don't have to do that.
Right.
You can have a global hit that's a turn-based video game. That's still a totally viable option. And you don't even have to spend nearly as much money as all of those Western studios are to achieve that level of success. It's just not necessary. Yeah. If anything, I think this should buoy and help the Japanese developers feel empowered to kind of go back to the roots of what was uniquely their cultural offering into this genre we call the RPG.
If that is the result of this, that is awesome. That would be so cool. But the more people push their side of it to either denigrate or defend, Japan as a Westerner or whatever it is, whatever you're seeing online, then the less likely something like that is to happen. But if you are, I'm trying to think about this. If that's the result, of this whole thing, then I think that's great. I just think the people on the extremes hurt their own cause when they're too, when they're too offensive about their particular position. But if that's the end of it, that'd be sweet.
There is a comment here from one of our patrons, Taliafer. Big disagree. Expedition 33 is a JRPG almost by the numbers. JRPG is a genre, not a geographical qualifier. If you have not seen our episode on the history of JRPGs, I invite you to watch it because we are not making that point. We are not making the argument that JRPGs are a geographical qualifier. That it can't be a JRPG unless it's made in Japan or something like that. That's not the point we're making. We're not saying it has to be made by Japanese developers. We're not saying it has to have been made on Japanese soil. Otherwise, you could just dig some Japanese soil and take it across seas and dump it and then go make a game on it. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that a JRPG specifically was birthed out of the culture of Japan. That doesn't mean that a person somewhere else in the world couldn't make a game that embodies that same culture.
Yeah. But Expedition
33 is explicitly not made in the vein of Japanese culture. It is made strictly in the vein of French culture.
Very much so. Very much so. And his inspirations were not only JRPGs. His inspirations were also other.
Right. A JRPG is not just about, is it turn-based or does it have this or that type of trope in it or this kind of character or this kind of story or whatever. There is so much about what makes a JRPG that is rooted in the culture of Japanese media from the 1980s and 90s that has, grown and evolved since then.
Right.
And we talk all about that and give our definition of what a JRPG is in that video. So if anybody is assuming that that's the argument that we're making here, it's not, and we invite you to go watch that video. We'll put a link to it somewhere so you can go see, get like the full picture on what our definition of a JRPG is. But I would say that this game takes elements, many, many, many elements of the JRPG, but roots itself in French and Western culture.
Yeah.
And therefore, I would not call it a JRPG for that reason, even though it is doing many of the things that the classic JRPGs we grew up loving did, and does them very well, and shows that they're still viable in a mainstream gaming market today. And I think that should empower Japanese developers.
Yeah. What if we call it a French JRPG? An F JRPG.
There were people who were trying to make, was it a Wii RPG into a thing? It's not happening. It's too weird. But there was people who were trying to make that thing, and it's not going to be a thing.
Interesting. If you have, that's funny.
Okay. Let's move on a little bit here. So I wanted to get into the Sekiro thing because you brought that up.
Yeah.
So the parry system and like the dodge and parry system being inspired by Sekiro. So this comes from Francois Maurice, the producer. First, the game has a strong JRPG gameplay inspiration. It was conceived as a turn-based game from the beginning, influenced by Final Fantasy 8, 9, and 10 in particular. Around the first iteration of the game director was playing Sekiro at the same time, and he thought the feeling of dodges and parries felt so good in From Software games. That's when we started to implement a more reactive turn-based system into our own game. It has become a core component, especially to the defense system of the gameplay. We began iterating on that to find the right balance. One thing that can be frustrating in classic full turn-based games is when you're in turn, it's your turn for defense, you usually cannot do anything and just take damage. There are many different builds, too. I'm not just talking about settings, but like the core gameplay build. Okay, it goes on to other things. But this is another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on as a point of contention between these hardcore anime JRPG guys and people who are like really, really into this turn-based combat system. Francois also talked about in another interview, I have it here, but I'm not going to read every single thing I took down, that he was more familiar with Paper Mario. That's what he brought up to him. And he's like,
Paper Mario's
you're talking
great.
about like Paper Mario, how you can like block and stuff. Or like Mario RPG.
Mario RPG, yeah.
Or the Mario and Luigi games, Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story. They all have those types of elements too.
Yeah.
Lost Odyssey also does. It has sort of an element of like a quick time event where you're like, if you hit at the right time, you do a little extra damage or something. But Expedition 33 takes this to a level way beyond what I have ever seen any JRPG do before. For the most part, when this mechanic does show itself, it's like you get a 15% boost in damage, maybe, or 10% or something like that, right? If you hit at the button exactly the right time on the hit, you'll get like, in Mario RPG's case, maybe like 2 HP extra damage.
Yeah, just like a little bit. They have low counters for that one. But it's nothing crazy. It's not like if you miss it, it's a problem.
No.
It's
especially
not like,
on
it's
the
not like you
defense
have
side.
to, especially on the defense side.
Yeah.
But it's not like you have to rely on being capable of doing that in order to win,
to succeed,
beat a boss or beat the game. Expedition 33 is a little different there.
You
totally actually have to get good at this, and there's like 4 different buttons to push, and sometimes they mixing the attacks and which one you have to parry with. That's something Mario RPG didn't do even close.
Yeah, I see where they were where the two influences sort of like came together. So this is again both a bit of an East and Western influence. Actually, I guess it's both East because Sekiro is made in Japan as well.
That's true, yeah.
But it's made kind of in the spirit of more like the Western style. But I mean, Sekiro is a samurai style game. You know what you know what I mean?
Because Dark Souls,
try to like give me the benefit of the doubt here. Dark Souls is meant to look like Western European fantasy stuff. Okay?
It's not a JRPG.
Anyway,
is Dark Souls a JRPG?
No,
okay,
it's not. This is my point about like it doesn't matter where the game is made. It matters the culture and spirit from which it's birthed. So I mean, you could say Sekiro is because the culture in which it's coming from is samurai stuff.
Yeah, but that's not anime.
Anyways. The point I'm trying to make here is the Eastern influence that I meant to be referencing, what I mean by that is the JRPG influence, is the Mario RPGs, the Lost Odysseys style. Dragon, what's it called? Oh God, it's locked. What the fetch is that game?
Blue. No, sorry. It's Dragoon, Legend of Dragoon.
Legend of Dragoon. Thank you. Lost Odyssey, Legend of Dragoon, Mario RPG, things like that, where you get this just like this little extra boost of damage if you hit the button at the right time, little extra defense. But it doesn't like make this grand difference to where if you're failing those, you're like significantly behind the person who's hitting them. It just gives you a little bit of an extra bit of interactivity while the fight's going on, instead of just watching the guys perform their attacks and defense. But Sekiro and FromSoft games, you absolutely need to master parrying and dodging to have success in those games. So it's like they wanted the element of that element from that, but like putting that or transposing that onto this defensive phase of a turn-based combat system. All that said, you can turn off the quick time elements of the attack portions of Expedition 33. So you don't have to do like hit the A button at the right time during the attacks.
Gotcha.
You can turn that entire thing off and ignore it altogether. What you can't ignore is that you have to be able to be successful to some degree in dodging. Not necessarily parrying. You don't have to parry. But you have to avoid damage to some degree, especially against later stage strong enemies, or you will not win. And that, I think, again, is a valid critique for those who loved and grew up with JRPGs and don't necessarily want that to be an element in their turn-based combat. I liked it.
Me too.
I would not like it
fun.
to be in every turn-based game that comes out.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't want this to be like the base foundation that every single turn-based game uses from now on.
Is like this like combo of FromSoft with a normal JRPG. Yeah, I would agree with that. Sometimes you just kind of want to sit back and, like give commands to the troops, tell the team what to do, just do the Suikoden style or even like a tactical RPG. Sometimes you just want to scroll through the menu, tell them what to do, and then they just do it. It doesn't have to always be like interactive.
Yeah, exactly. So, I sympathize with people who aren't necessarily into that or who maybe just aren't very good at that kind of
that
game.
Could be a thing.
Right?
And as I get older,
that might
be
my
me.
reaction time's just not the greatest, and it just makes it hard for me to enjoy the game because of it. Totally get that. That said, I like that we have one example of a game where that kind of thing is required to succeed in the game. That's like part of its foundation of how it was made. It's made with the intention that you're going to have to learn that skill.
Yeah.
And maybe that becomes a foundation for Claire Obscure games going forward, because they have talked about Claire Obscure as the franchise name.
Yeah.
Expedition 33 is this particular game.
Yeah.
But the next one will be called Claire Obscure something else.
Yeah.
If Claire Obscure games were built with that, philosophy in mind, I think that's fine. I just don't want other developers to take the wrong idea that its success is based on the fact that we have to do dodges and parrying
and gradient counters.
I don't want that to be what's taken away from this.
Yeah, I agree.
But that was the idea behind why they chose to do this the way they did. I think we can move past the inspirations. Persona, Final Fantasies 8, 9, and 10, Lost Odyssey, games like this, and then Sekiro. And we talked about how the reason they stuck with Unreal Engine 5 and Unreal Engine 4 rather than other tools for making games is because it allowed them to be able to do a lot of things they wouldn't be able to because they didn't have that sort of experience or skill set to do a lot of the coding and programming, at least not until they started building the team out. But they did add that there was a downside to it, right? There was a downside to locking yourself to making a game in Unreal Engine that I think a lot of people, especially those who have any experience or who know a lot about Unreal Engine, they know its limitations.
You can feel it. Yeah. When you play the game, pretty quickly, oh, this was made in Unreal Engine. Yeah. Right? It's not that. And once you know that, then you start seeing, okay, this is the physics parameters. This is the particles setting. I think Expedition 33 may have overdone the particles just a little bit. This is the stock assets and how things tend to look. Yeah. But a lot of people don't know that stuff, and it looked perfectly fine for them.
Yeah. So I think we can move past that. So this is another quote from Francois Meurice. We had been ditched by venture capitalists. They were interested in the metaverse and applications that could quickly scale, so we ended up pitching to family and friends.
That's funny because what happened to the metaverse recently?
Yeah, I know, right? Again, the ineptitude of corporate types who don't have any real interest or passion in the thing that they are trying to profit off of. They don't understand what makes them special. And so they don't know who is the right person to elevate into a leadership position or whose ideas are better. It's just, it's so clear to me that in order to make really good art, it cannot come out of a corporation. Or it would be a miracle if it did, and it would be in spite of them.
It would be in spite of them, yeah. That's
not
a good point,
because of them. They probably tried at every step. If there's a corporate entity that created or that produced or in some other aspect, what's the word I'm looking for?
Distributed, yeah.
Like a great piece of art. I'm sure the creative leads fought tooth and nail against those people to get it into the shape in which it was.
I'll bet.
So I want to talk a little bit about Jennifer Yen joining. So we already talked about the fact that she had wanted to do voices, but when she came on, she was going to do. She had never done voice acting before. She was like you said, she had been like a private equity investor and NASA stuff and other adventures. So I think her husband's father was from Sweden. Yeah. So she has sort of like a Swedish kind of.
So it would be in Swedish, it would be pronounced Svedberg.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Svedberg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so she ended up moving to Sweden when her husband's father contracted cancer. But she's like a California native and had lived in Australia during the COVID pandemic. That's when like she came across Guillaume Broche in his whole project. But the fact that she ended up with her husband going to Sweden she ended up being closer to the development team in France.
Yeah.
So that kind of like worked out. But initially, she was just on forums on Reddit, bored during the pandemic, and was like, I've never tried voice acting before. That sounds like it could be fun. I'll do that for free.
Okay, so she seems like the kind of person who you all hate because she's good at everything she does.
Yes.
It's just like, let me write a book. It sells 1 million copies. Let me be a voice actress. Let me work at NASA. Let me be in finance. Like, gets bored because they're so good at everything they do.
Anyways, so yeah, she's like you're saying, she's just a very, very gifted artist. And the thing is that I can't say his name, dude. Guillaume.
So here's what might help you with that. So Guillaume is William. It's William, but for French. So it's Guillaume. And Guillaume Broche.
Okay. Guillaume. He's writing the game in English, but he's French.
Yeah.
Right? So like when she's coming on to like do voice acting and stuff, they're talking about the story and about like the dialogue and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And he offers her, hey, do you want to help me since you are a native English speaker?
That's right, because he wanted the game written in English.
Yeah, help me like clean this up in terms of the dialogue and stuff.
They didn't even know what they had. They were just like, you speak English, you write the script. And they didn't realize she's actually really talented.
Well, I mean, I think he was realizing that in their like recording sessions and whatnot, and she's like giving him pointers on how maybe they could reword that. Let's maybe reword that in this way that might come across more naturally.
Right, or here's how you develop a character. Here's how you tell a story.
She's like giving her input, and he's like, do you want to like write the story?
That's
And like that's how she eventually came on to be the writer.
That's cool.
And then ended up not doing any voices at all.
Oh, really? She didn't end up doing any?
She didn't end up doing any of the voices in the game.
Oh, maybe she's not good at everything
she was going to do. She was going to do 2 characters in like that original idea, but like again, they finally found a set of investors,
really good
and a publisher in Kepler who gave them like a pretty significant budget, like a $10 million budget. It's like, think bigger is what they told them.
Yeah.
And that's what she remembers, because she was writing a story that they said was based in London, that was like totally different and scaled way down for what they were going to be able to do. And then they get these investors saying like, no, think bigger than this.
They were saying, if you could make any game in the world, like what would you make?
Yes.
Make that one.
And so Guillaume comes back and says, like, start over, essentially, on the story. A lot of the same thematic elements make it through, but, like, they totally rethought the world and, like, how it operates and its world building and lore. And she was...
Instead of a clock, it's a year. The tick of the clock is 1 year going down.
Right, exactly. Right. So, like, certain elements make it, they just change in how they function in the world. And it became a much more ambitious type of story for that reason. But she mentioned in one of the podcasts I was listening to being really annoyed because she had just finished like the world kind of like Bible of the world's, like the world building she was doing for that. She had just completed this massive document, like fleshing out this whole world and everything in it. And then they're like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to go bigger than this, start over. Okay. And so this is where she sort of took inspiration from a short story she had been writing about painters.
Oh, yeah. Very
right.
Cool.
Being able to create, getting lost in the worlds they paint. And, you know, ended up sort of like adjusting what became, you know, the idea of a giantess. A giantess sort of like got
like
pitched. And so it was like, like a god figure. And so she was like, okay, this painter that I had written about in my story who gets lost in her painting is going to be that character. But then Guillaume's mother kind of like put the last piece of the puzzle together for them to like complete their world idea. When he asked his mother, like, what would be the worst possible thing that you believe could happen to you? She said, losing one of my children.
Right, yeah.
And she's like, okay, this paintress is going to be a mother who lost a child and is lost in this world, and a daughter is coming after her to like get her back. Of course, that then expanded further, and they had more family members and things like that. But that's where like that idea came from.
Isn't it so strange when you hear that? What's the worst thing that can ever happen to you? Okay, I'm gonna make that happen
to my characters.
I'm gonna have my characters live through that. And not only does that happen, of course, the death of a loved one. Okay, I'm gonna make people fall in love with my character and I'm gonna kill him so that they can experience how awful it is. And it's like, okay, but then we're drawn to that. It's almost like it's not just a morbid curiosity. It's almost like we are drawn to
pain and conflict,
to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Almost in the sense of often you can say, oh, we're trying to find meaning or purpose and things like that. But also we just, for some reason, like we look at other people's pain and we don't want to just look away from it. We don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. We almost want to feel it ourselves too. We almost want to suffer with these people so that then, what do they say? Pain shared is pain divided. Joy shared is joy multiplied.
Yes.
For some reason, in sharing, taking part in something like that, alleviates it, or to some degree, either makes it better, or in the case with pain, it divides it. Like it makes it easier to bear. And so then we gravitate towards stories about where the worst possible thing can happen to people. But part of me, when I first came across that exact same quote, I was like, oh man, that was a root of her. But another part of me is like, but yeah, that's actually what I look for in media. That's what we all gravitate towards.
Well, storytelling at its root, at its core, whether it's fictional or whether you're telling a story about your real life to someone else, you're like sharing with them what really happened to you. Storytelling in all forms is like vicarious learning. It's a person like listening to that experience, like internalizing it. I mean, like, how does this relate to me? And like, how can I maybe like take something from that and like
that's really deep.
Apply
actually.
it to my own conflicts and struggles and pain that I'm going through.
What I think about that is that in sharing the suffering, you are alleviating the suffering, and art is a way of kind of sharing suffering. It's a method for you to share that suffering, and the more we share it, the less suffering
people
there
feel
is as a result over time.
People feel like they're not alone
No.
by seeing someone else's experience, fictional or not.
Fictional or not.
It's like,
that's the interesting part.
I relate to that. I'm not alone. And this goes back to a conversation we've had many, many times. The thing people want by having a conversation at all to anyone is, am I alone in my perspective?
Right, to be validated.
Am I alone in my perspective? Am I crazy? Am I the only one experiencing this? Am I the only one in this whole world who like is going through what I'm going through?
Yeah.
And for some reason, the answer being no is a validating one. No, there are other people who feel the same way. Makes you feel like, okay, like again, you're dividing
that's right.
burden.
Somehow it just, I don't know where it went, but it just got offloaded.
Yeah.
Some of it got offloaded from your shoulder.
You feel like other people have not only experienced that same thing, but they've gotten through it.
Right.
So there's like hope that I can too. So like it gives you, again, a sense of validation and hope. And that's what people are really looking for in any kind of social interaction whatsoever. But most social interactions, I'd say all of them, are storytelling.
But
that's how
our brain works.
Are having a conversation. I'm telling you stories about my life, about what happened to me today, or, oh, dude, you're not going to believe this. Like, I was over here, and then like this happened. You're telling a story. Most of the time, it probably didn't actually happen exactly that way. A lot of people exaggerate a little bit to like make the story funnier or like sound more dramatic or whatever.
Once again, that's how our brain works, man.
But the point of that is not lying.
Right.
The point of that is to help people understand how it felt.
Yeah, you're highlighting certain things. That's not lying. It's just you're making clear this part that otherwise would have been hidden at the expense of other details that seem less relevant.
It might not have actually happened that way, but it felt that way to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to describe it that way.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get how I felt. It's
which is more important than the forensic technical.
This is exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
Right. And because what you're doing is sharing your pain or your experiences with people and trying to say, trying to find out, I'm not the only one who sees it this way, right? Like that dude was crazy for doing that, right? Like I'm not. Anyway, We've talked about that a lot in the past, but
A conclusion of this would be share your pain.
yeah,
Sharing your pain, actually, it won't just help you. It actually might
Helps.
help everybody.
everybody. And that's what storytelling is. And
Yeah.
so that would be why you would do the most horrible thing you can think of to your characters in the story.
Right.
Because
those things happen.
yeah, those things happen probably to lesser degrees, or maybe not for the few. It
Well,
might
for
be,
some, yeah,
you know,
sure.
like you think about war stories or something. It's like some people have experienced that, most people have not.
Right.
But to smaller degrees, things like that you can relate to, and you can imagine what that would feel like, and that helps you share and divide pain and gives you hope that you can get through the stuff you're getting through. The next two things I want to go over here, it's a long quote from her, but then there's one right after that from Broche. And this has a lot to do with interpreting what's going on with the ending of the game. And in fact, it helped me understand, I think, why I saw the ending the way I did on the original playthrough versus how I saw it when we did it for the podcast.
Okay.
And this is relating to, are the painted people real people or not?
Right.
Right? So she's responding, we had a lot of discussions internally about how players would react to different reveals. Not just that one, but also Gustave's death, which felt right for the game and for the story, though it did start as a joke. But it felt like the right story arc for Gustave. But we did wonder, or I wondered at least, are people going to reject Verso? I think a lot of people did reject Verso.
Oh, yes,
and again,
absolutely.
they're not wrong for feeling that way, but they were aware that like this might be something people do.
Yeah,
There's an
'cause
implicit understanding or assumption with a main character, how will players feel when suddenly it's yanked out from under them? So we definitely thought a lot about that. And then the reveal about the fact that this is a painting. First of all, would they understand what that means? And second of all, will people feel like, wait, so none of this matters? Was this all just a dream? It meant nothing? Our hope was that people would, after having spent time with the characters, realize these characters are real, to them. This was maybe a bit of a slip up on her part, I feel like. And I do remember reading something like that, like back when the game came out.
Yeah,
and I think this
yeah.
led into my assumption that the characters aren't technically real,
Right.
canonically, but like we're supposed to feel like they are, and it's supposed to make it a hard choice.
That's what I felt when I first played the game too.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it sucks, but like it's a game.
Yeah.
It's a dream. It's a painting. And that's how I felt as well.
Yeah.
And like as real as it was to me, like that didn't stop the developers from killing off Gustav. He was pretty cool. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, this is just kind of, not the worst thing in the world to turn off the game console.
Yeah, and man, this just opens so many different rabbit holes. Like, there were a lot of people I saw as they're finishing the game who would be like, as soon as I found out that the world is a painting, right? That it's not like real per se.
Yeah.
At least the way that they were interpreting that.
Right.
That I lost all interest in the story after that. I was really invested in this like journey to fight the paintress. But then I found out like none of that's real. None of these expeditioners are real. It's actually just about this family who like can't get over themselves, especially the rich part of it. This rich family who like can't get over themselves, right?
Yeah.
And like I hate that family, and so like I lost interest in the story after that. I also understand where those people are coming from. It's not like totally dissimilar to some people who didn't like learning that like was a dream in right? Like, oh, he's not real. Now, watch our series. We explain that that's not really what's going on there. The word dream tripped a lot of people up. He's not like some ethereal, abstract concept that just like came out of someone's head but was never a real person or something like that. Right. It's much more complex and cool than that. But people had that same kind of idea. As soon as you realize, oh, it's just a dream, or this isn't even just within JRPG stories. I mean, there's a lot of stories outside of that where you learn,
Sure.
oh, Inception maybe, like
Oh, sure.
What's a dream and what's real? And people immediately kind of take like, if it's a dream, then it doesn't matter because it's just all fake anyways.
Because we have dreams every night.
Yeah. And like, I'm not going to sit here and like cry over someone died in my dream. I mean, you might at first, when you first wake up, because it felt very real, but then you realize and it's like, oh no, it's no big deal. It wasn't real.
Right.
I think that she might be giving off that sense by wording it that way. And that might have been a mistake.
Yeah, it's like Frodo's real to me.
Yeah. Because also it completely erases any of the complexity of the philosophical debates around the ending choice. If it's true that these are just really advanced video game NPCs, then the answer is too obvious. Verso's ending is the right answer.
Right.
Like, this is a story about these women being addicted to this fake world where they can pretend to live a life with their son/brother who is not real. And we have to, like, if we put it this way, and I guess I should say, it would be a commentary on like parasocial relationships, right? Like having relationships with fictional characters or with like influencers online who you've never met and don't really know or something. It's just a concept in your brain.
Right.
Like that might be a real person, but your idea of that person is nothing like who the real person is if you met them in real life.
Us excluded, of course. You know, we're not talking about us by any means.
If it's true that like this is a defined for sure thing that the developers are confirming with this, what Jennifer Yen has just said, it's real, you know, to them, that erases any complexity to this moral question.
Yeah, it does.
Because as much as I love Final Fantasy VII, if in some future there was a way for like my son or someone I loved to like escape into the world of Final Fantasy VII and they would never leave, and in fact, if they stayed in there long enough, they would die, I would go to any length to destroy every digital copy of Final Fantasy VII that exists until it is erased, until it no longer exists, to get my loved one out of there and into the real world and not let them kill themselves in there. That would be justified.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So that would be an easy answer. So I feel like she might have slipped up a little bit there, but I'll read it again. Our hope was that people would, after having spent time with the characters, realize these characters are real, you know, to them. Now, I also want to say, I'm not trying to say that it can't mean that that's the truth about this world. Just that to say so explicitly gets rid of the whole point that was Guillaume Broche's intention from the beginning, which was to have this very like difficult, divisive ending with a really difficult moral choice. If you're just going to come right out in an interview and say, no, that world's not real, it erases that, right? So she goes on to say, because these are all pixels on a screen, or she said, and in a way it's a little bit meta in that sense, right? Because these are all pixels on a screen. It's fictional characters. None of them are real. But people were very upset when Gustave died, because Gustave feels real to them. And people were very emotional at the end of the game with the reveal about the canvas world, even though, again, it's a game.
So our initial read on this game was totally accurate.
According to what she's saying
according to the lead writer.
Which I believe I had seen something like this, a quote like this.
Okay.
Which I think was why I felt so certain about the fact that these were just really advanced video game NPCs. Right? So anyway, it goes on, but like I just wanted to read that point and then quickly like counteract that with this quote from the director, from Broche. The game story has caused furious online debate, particularly its ending. That was intended long before the game was called Expedition 33.
Very nice.
And he insists that leaving it up to the audience's interpretation.
Sure.
However, he did clarify that the audience is meant to think of and connect the game's world and characters as real and human. If you don't, it means we failed as writers. So yes, I hope you do.
Well, but he... Yes. Okay, when he says we failed as writers, that gives the game away again. in that exact same way, where it's like, oh, this fictional thing I created wasn't real enough to you. Well, you're hearkening back to the fact that this is a game and that these things aren't real. That their goal as writers and as game developers is to trick you into thinking that these things are real because they're so talented, something like that. That line at the very end of that sort of kind of pushes things back a little bit, I think, towards what Jennifer was saying.
Well, here's the way that I think I read what he's saying there. He's saying that he's not telling you whether or not the painted people are sentient. He's not like saying that. I think what he's saying is, I hope that you come to feel like they are. So that by the time you get to that end choice, and I'm not talking about in the meta sense like the fictional character on your game screen. Right. I hope that when you're thinking about the game world of Expedition 33, and as you've played it, that you're conflicted on, are they real or not? I feel like they are.
So when he says we failed as developers, he means we didn't straddle the line perfectly enough to convince you one way or the other.
Right.
Oh no, we failed. Everyone fell to one side or the other.
Yeah.
We failed. Not that we failed in crafting people that seem and feel super real.
Yeah.
So it's a different look on it.
That's kind of more the way I read it. And
okay.
I think he's saying that if you come to that choice.
But hold on though, because he's saying if you don't think of them as real, we failed.
If you don't
just say they're real, that's not even a talent artist thing.
No. I think what he's saying is he's not trying to tell you whether they're real or not. Because if he says they are real, it's the same problem the other direction.
Right.
It's then the whole genocide part of this is like it has to be considered.
Okay, so then he's saying it's up to my artistic talent as to whether or not you felt they were real or not.
He is saying that he wants you to be the one to make that decision.
Okay.
And if you get to that point and your immediate thought is, oh, they're not real anyways, then they have failed at making that moral conundrum land, because they need to at least create some doubt in your mind that they are sentient and real. Like if you don't feel
without
that,
saying it.
Yeah, if you don't feel that from the interactions you've had with those characters, this person feels sentient to me. This does not feel like an advanced NPC. That person has to have a soul.
But I didn't feel that at any point playing the game.
So he would say then he probably failed to convey that to you.
Well, but
right?
that's just the game. I mean, there's dialogue options and everything
no,
just looks
okay, sorry.
I
feel like
what I'm saying?
I think we're getting caught up on something.
I know, but I'm trying to go to both sides, but each side I'm seeing a contradiction.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Are you thinking that what he's saying is he wants you, Kaysen, to think that Ciel, the character in the video game Expedition 3, is a real person?
No, I think he wants the character to feel real enough to me to be sad at killing them.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, that's one part of it. Yes.
Okay,
and then the other part of it is, are you conflicted in when you're thinking about the lore of the game's world building? Are the painted people sentient or not? Is that question on your mind when you are making that choice at the end of the game?
Yes, but I'm going back and forth between what does he mean by we didn't do our job, other than not telling me enough things. Like, because the whole point is that they didn't give us enough information to decide whether or not it's true. And that's part of artistry, is what you don't say, is withholding information.
I think it goes back to what we've been saying this whole time, is we don't have enough information to know for sure.
Right. And
so there's a point of doubt.
And they didn't do their job if they accidentally put in too much information.
If they made it seem like the answer is clearly they're not sentient,
right,
we failed as writers.
Because the point of the game is to make you choose. That was the whole beginning,
yes.
Right? From the beginning, it was, oh no, two bad options. We want people to be forced to make two bad options.
Yes.
And have to choose one of those. And so if that's the purpose, then they failed in that sense. But what he's saying there is, if they don't feel real to you, then we failed. Something like that, right?
Yeah. If
that's what I took that.
The thing that's so hard about this is the English language of the word real. Like it's like, what do you mean when you're saying real? What does he mean when he's saying real? I think when he's saying real, he means, are the painted people sentient in the world of Expedition 33? Fair. Are they real in that sense?
That's probably what he's saying.
Not necessarily like, do I feel like this video game character? Do I feel sad enough at the death of this video game character, that I would feel the same way about a video game character dying as a real person dying.
But that's what the debate online is about, basically.
I think it's about the other, though. I think it's about,
the whole genocide
do you
claim.
view the painted people in the world of Expedition 33, the lore, the canonical lore of its world, the rules of its world, as sentient people with souls or not? Yeah. If they have sentient people with souls in that painting, then the gamage is a genocide.
Right.
And that's wrong. That's immoral. So the choice of Verso is a genocide that is morally wrong.
So I guess I'm reading his comment in light of the one that you read previously from the writer, from Jennifer, where she said they are real to them, right?
Yes,
because I can identify with that.
She slipped up.
And then he comes in and he says, we didn't do our job good enough if they aren't real to you, right? And I'm like...
Yes. He's saying the opposite thing as she is. I think she said that.
I don't know.
And I think that that her saying that undermines that entire moral dilemma.
Okay.
Because she is talking as if, from the canonical point of view of the writer of the story, they're not really sentient.
They just
feel that way.
Right.
And that there's value in a meta sense to the fact, like we were just talking about, you can take a fictional character and be able to relate to that person like you would a real human being. Right? Like you can learn vicariously through some fictional character's experience and have that shared division of burden or pain, like we're talking about. That is still valid, as I think what she's trying to say, which is a perfectly good point.
Yes.
I think accidentally what she does there is then more or less say out loud that the people of the painting are fictional in that sense, that they're not sentient with souls. They're not real people. And I don't think that's what Broche wanted you to think when you think about this. I think he wanted you to really wrestle with, they could be sentient people with souls in that painting. And I don't want to tell you that they're not or that they are. I want you, based on your experience with Lune and Ciel and all those other, and Verso, I want you to tell me, do you feel that person has a soul that you developed a relationship with?
When you say that, anyways, but I think he's trying to say both. I think he's saying both the aim of the game as to make you confused, to forcibly confuse you as to which one's the right choice, and also to make characters that feel realistic enough.
Yes.
That those both factor into
That's
it.
correct.
It's not one or the other.
No,
it's
you're right.
both.
You're right. I'm not saying that
fair enough.
I'm not saying that he's trying to confirm they do have souls. I'm saying if he feels that if you don't at least wrestle with that question,
then he failed. Fair enough.
If you just arrived at the end, they're obviously not real, and you never at all once ever questioned that because you didn't have.
I didn't when I played the game.
So maybe he didn't do a good enough job.
I wouldn't say he failed though. The game's dope. I chose Verso's ending, and I loved the game. There's no way that I would say he failed.
I see what you're saying.
That's maybe where I'm having some trouble understanding him. Where I'm like, dude, there's no world that you failed, but I chose Verso's ending. You know what I'm saying?
But there is also the fact that we came back to the game and then wrestled and grappled with that question later, digging into it more and looking at more evidence based on what characters said here, or the fact that the painting does have like a piece of Verso's soul in it and like this whole thing, right? So like eventually we got there, but like maybe on the first playthrough, and admittedly, like I looked at a quote like that. I think I looked at that after I had beaten the game, but you know, that sort of like, what do you call that? It like led the witness, so to speak. Like her saying that was like, oh yeah, okay, bit. Like they're not like,
you know what? I wonder if this is what he's saying with that. Is if you beat the game and you came up to him and you were like, dude, Guillermo,
nice job.
Guillermo, that game was dope. I loved that game. He's like, oh, really? Oh, yeah. Which ending did you pick? Well, obviously I picked Versos because that was the only obvious one to pick. Like, if the other one didn't even make sense. Then something in his soul would have gotten hurt by that. Where even if you loved the game, oh, those bosses were sweet. Oh, I loved the battle system. But if you didn't feel conflicted at the end and you just picked the one you thought was obvious, ouch, that you just stabbed his heart a little bit. Right? And maybe that's
then he feels like he didn't do a good enough job conveying the potential realness of those party members you traveled with the whole time. And formed bonds and relationships with and heard their stories about their lives and their trauma and their pain and thought, nah, you're just a freaking video game NPC.
None of that mattered,
Right? If you didn't have that vicarious experience that you do with any movie that you get really enveloped in.
Right, something that makes you stop and think,
You know, you might leave the movie and go like, you know, that character's not a real person. But like when you're watching it, that's the suspension of disbelief that occurs where like you're so enveloped in that story and like what they're telling you that it feels real to you. I think if they had not managed to accomplish that feeling at some point while you're playing the game, that would have felt like a failure. And so I think that, and the whole reason I bring this up is because I think we got a comment on one of our discussions or later in the series of the podcast here, who someone felt like, I can't believe you guys are like giving credence to this idea that they could be real and have souls. Well, and like this is this is like a really morally
the obvious.
Well, no, just like I'm really surprised and almost disappointed that you are giving any like credence to this what he thought was morally despicable sort of point of view that you're going to empower those who want to live in some fantasy.
Right, AI, future, metaverse kind of thing.
Yeah. And so what I wanted to clarify with those two quotes from the developers was one, that there is evidence based on what the writer of the game said that what you're saying has more or less been, you could take that and say like, it's confirmed. She basically said right there that the painted people aren't real. They're just real to me. But I think what Broche says after that is meant to be the real sort of like
he has
what
veto
he
power.
really intended. He wanted you to be unsure of that question.
And in that case, because most people come pretty hard on one side or the other. He failed for all of you. The only people he succeeded with are those in the middle who actually tried to grapple with the serious question.
And I think you're right to go the other way around. The
Both
people
sides,
who are like,
if they think it's obvious, then his heart is hurt a little bit.
I think it's also, you are also meant to question, am I just going to allow this person to waste away in a fantasy and never deal with like the grief and the pain of what happened to them? And like never give their life a second shot? Like, am I really all for this essentially very convincing but false simulation?
Right.
Both of those things you should not be sure about. I feel like at the end of this, you do eventually have to make a choice, but that choice should hurt.
Right.
And you should feel doubt about whether you made the right one.
It shouldn't be obvious.
Or
he failed.
Or he would feel like he failed if you felt like it was obvious. And that to me is what makes the ending compelling, because they don't give you enough information to know for sure. So if you choose Verso's ending, it's like, did I really know for sure that I'm not wiping out sentient living beings with souls, whatever that means, consciousness, if you're something of a nihilist yourself.
You don't believe in
with
the soul.
Consciousness, right? Did I just do that? Was I really sure? Or the other direction, am I really sure these people are real? Am I really sure I'm not like empowering this girl to just like run away from her family and her real life to live in a fantasy where she can just like escape from it all. Like I think both endings are meant to leave you feeling with a twinge of unsurety about that.
Right.
They're both dark, and you're not supposed to be like confident, and they don't give you enough answers in the game for you to confidently say yes or no.
Right.
I think that's the whole point. And so I think you're meant to grapple with it in that sense. And I think that when she spoke about it in that way, that it might have led a little too much the witness, or maybe the way that she herself thinks about it. I don't know. I haven't talked to her, and I don't think any of these developers have really done much talking about the ending for this specific reason. I don't think Broche wants them to do that. Okay, here's another one. This is from Yen, though, from Jennifer Yen.
Yeah.
One of the philosophies that Guillaume and I both have about storytelling is we don't want the story to be cut and dry in terms of this is right and this is wrong. This is what you should be doing. So that's why I say she might have made a mistake wording it in that way, because she made it seem like there was an answer and it was this, but she just said right there, that's not what they were intending.
Right.
They both, as like a philosophy as writers, they don't want you to be sure that this is for sure what you should be doing. We raise questions, and we want the player to engage with those questions, and we want the player to be part of the decision making. Everything really needs to work with the player's own life experiences, and the journey they went through with these characters. In terms of the antagonist, that's also something I think depends on the perspective of the player and how you think about the world and what you value. Another philosophical point that Guillaume and I sort of set early on was that this is not about good versus evil. This is about a world where people genuinely care about each other, and conflicts arise because they have different perspectives on what needs to be done. And that ended up being so much a part of what the discussion turned into, is a tribal mudslinging of this is morally wrong, and no, you're morally wrong, and that's evil what you chose. And that's not what they wanted you to come away with.
But here's the thing, though. Did they kind of not set themselves up for that? Like, if the whole point was, oh, we're going to have this serious, severe moral question at the end of our game, and we don't want to answer it for you, and we want to make sure to divide everyone exactly down the middle, 50-50. Yeah, they succeeded. And guess what happens when you do that?
You create that environment.
That's what happens. It's human nature. So in some ways...
You're right. Like... it's certain to create that almost no matter what.
Yeah.
But I think if people are interested in like really digging into the moral questions that this game is raising, it goes so far below, so much deeper than just
most people
that. You're committing genocide, or you're empowering someone to escape into a fantasy.
And if them, why not everyone else? Like that, and I get to the commenter's point that you're referring to, that being lenient on that, being like, well, we don't know if they're real or not, so it empowers more people to do so, which eventually leads to an actual genocide of the actual human race, because everyone would rather live in a fantasy world than in the real world. At some point. Maybe not everybody, but 14-year-olds, teenagers, 16-year-old girls, I'll bet you can convince a whole lot of them to spend their lives in a simulation where they don't have all the defects and all the awkwardness that they are going through at the time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And something like that can be very detrimental to
and super addicting, and super like you just
and we haven't brought up painter sickness.
A temptation that like you can't freaking like how could you possibly
as a teenager? Geez.
How could you possibly like avoid falling into that?
Yeah.
Like I could craft my life to where I am the most revered, the most handsome,
the strongest,
the most athletic, the most everything.
And you're immortal,
the richest
in this world.
Immortal. Why would I not choose that life?
It's really hard.
Over my real life.
Of suffering and
And
difficulties.
so, and also just relationships, the parasocial relationship nature of this.
No.
I mean, this is a very real thing. And there are people who are addicted to their media, who are addicted to the fictional relationship they have with false characters, rather than going and meeting real people in real life, which they have a fear about and they feel insecure about. They feel safe here.
Yeah, exactly.
That is part
That's a
of
problem.
what you should be asking yourself when you choose Miles' ending. Are you empowering that?
And if you'll empower for her, who else would you enable it for?
Yeah.
And where does that stop?
Right. Yeah. And so, like, anyway, you're supposed to grapple with that question. You're not supposed to be very, very sure one way or the other. I think they've been very, very clear about that. So anyway, I just have a couple extra things. So it was spoken about quite a lot when the game came out. This is a game made by like 30 people, just about 30 people. And
I don't know the final tally.
So started out with like the core five team.
Yeah.
They went and got some funding. They got a Kepler deal, and some investors came on, and they expanded their internal team to about 30, 34, 33 maybe.
Why would you say 34?
Because that number has been debated a bit. I guess we could read the credits and like count them up, but that number has not been like perfectly let out. It's 33, but let's just say when
you're telling the story
to satisfy
you just say 33.
The OCD of the audience, it was 33.
And
people.
Also after 33 days being on sale, it sold 3.3
3.3 million.
I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but
it makes the story better. Anyway, that was the core internal Sandfall team. It was a core team of about 33 people, right? That part is true. But that's not all who worked on the game. They outsourced a lot of it.
Like was Andy
QA
Serkis testing? An employee?
Yeah, right. Clearly big voice actors came in. Ben Starr, Jennifer English.
Helped
Is it Jennifer English? Anyways. But yeah, Andy Serkis.
The QA testing, all the testers.
QA testing, but then a lot of animation, especially battle animation, was outsourced to like a Korean studio.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot more than 30 people who worked on the game.
Yeah.
But it is true that like the core Sandfall team is composed of about 30-something people. I'm sure it's more than that now, and we'll be moving forward. But
333. They can't go over that. Like, don't go over that. That's like double but Dunbar number. Like, just
Yeah. Anyway, so they grew in size, but it was still a pretty small internal team. But they did outsource a lot of different aspects of the game to outside teams who were better at that than they could be. Whether it's animation, whether it's QA testing, whether it's porting to like consoles.
Oh, that's right.
Whether, a lot of things like that. There's a lot of people who worked on the game who were outsourced, who came from teams outside of that core team. Charlie Cox, who was the voice actor for Gustav, is not a gamer at all. You might recognize him if you've seen like the Daredevil series. He plays Daredevil. Came in and essentially in like an 8-hour session or something, like did all of his stuff.
Wow.
And never played the game. And all of a sudden heard, I guess everyone loves this thing. I feel like a total fraud because I don't know anything about games. I don't play games. Right. I got this job. I was only there for like one day. Yeah. And like they made a really awesome thing. And I had this very tiny part in it. But I'm like, my character is like the face of the whole thing. And my voice is like,
not only that, he did a killer job. Like he did a really
great job. A really great job. The voice talent in general is really great. And the writing is really great. And Jennifer Yen speaks about that. People have praised me for the story that I wrote and the dialogue that I wrote, but like the voice cast, and not just voice cast, I mean like the people doing the motion capture and things like that, like they all contributed to what was the final product and like the way that impacted people. Like the words are not the be all end all. It's like, how is that said? And what is the subtext in the character's expression when they say it, or in what they choose not to say, or in how they turn when they say that. All of that performance is a big part of the storytelling too. And that was all done by very, very talented people, including Charlie Cox, even though he feels like a fraud because he was only there for like one day to do his parts. Amazing that he was able to do that one day, though.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I've heard this too from other actors who have done voice acting, that like Hugo Weaving was in the Transformer movies, and I think he said that one day. He was like, they paid me like $500,000 and I spent like 2 hours in the studio. He was like, it's the easiest money I've ever made. He kind of felt the same way, where it was like, I feel like I didn't even really do anything.
And then just some of those last two quotes from some of the overwhelming emotions they had after the success of the game. So this is from Guillaume Broche. It was overwhelming. I was expecting turn-based fans to stand up and say, oh, this looks cool, but I wasn't expecting this community to be that excited, actually. Yeah. It's like we awakened a sleeping dragon. And this really does feel true to me. I felt like I was fighting that sentiment in my own comments section sometimes. People who grew up on the same games, love the same games as me, arguing against the need for any game going forward to be turn-based. Turn-based is outdated. We've had these debates before. Yeah. And I just had this like feeling about it based on the analogies we made. Like a gameplay style can't be outdated. That just means you're not being creative enough to iterate on the ideas or like do something new or different with it. And then this game came around and absolutely, I mean, because I know a lot of the debates I got into were, well, how about this game that's turn-based? And they say, well, that game's not like a mega seller like this is. You know, that's not going to be a Witcher 3 type success. And it's like, well, what about Baldur's Gate? Well, that's a game that succeeded despite being turn-based, not because of it. They don't play it because it's turn-based. And well, you have a game that's basically built from the ground up to be a turn-based game that tons of freaking normies and casual RPG people came into and loved and was a mega hit like we're talking about. I'm sure this game will sell way beyond 10 or 15 million units by the time it's done. And people loved it. They loved its gameplay. They loved its combat. And it was designed specifically to show that that is still a viable type of gameplay that people can still really love en masse. And the last one here from Francois Maurice. Clair Obscur is the name for the bigger IP because we've already imagined a linked universe, maybe a later game. Clair Obscur itself is a reference to a painting technique in Italy. What is it? Chiaroscuro?
Chiaroscuro,
which is a way to paint with contrast between light and dark.
Or chiaroscuro, I think.
Chiaro, I think.
Or is it? Yeah.
Chiaroscuro. This has a deeper meaning in the story of the game and maybe future games as well. So, Clair Obscur seems to be the concept under which more games will be made, even if they're not like direct sequels to Expedition 33 exactly.
Right.
There is some kind of linked universe there where they can do lots of stuff in. And Jennifer Yen was talking about that too. She was talking about how much she has written outside of like what's in that game that she's like really excited to possibly explore. There's like
maybe
a lot of different...
pick up that Bible she had written about the previous game that they were going to make.
Sure, and do
dust
something
that off a little
with that.
Yeah, but there's a lot. You got the writers. You've got any painting can be whatever. You've got the world, like the actual world, however that freaking works. Yeah. That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
There's the old. Did you ever play the old like Harry Potter games, like 20, 25 years ago?
Yeah, like the PS1.
Yeah.
Hagrid.
And actually, no, I'm talking more like Game Boy Advance. Or
those ones.
Or like Super Nintendo. Actually, would it be Super Nintendo?
No, I don't think it was out.
But you move around Hogwarts Castle by like jumping into paintings, and then you come out of paintings.
I think that was the Game
in like a different
Boy
place.
One. Yeah.
Okay. It's just cool. You can do a lot with that.
Yeah.
You like go into a painting and it links up with a different painting.
You jump out of the other painting.
If there's a split painting. Yeah. It's like one side of it is somewhere else, and it's like a secret passage.
Yeah.
That'd be dope.
There's all kinds of cool ways they could go with it. I had talked about maybe getting into some comments and things, but I think we've already addressed the bulk of the comments that I had seen that I wanted to clarify my positions on.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we're sure, which we shouldn't be according to them, but if we're sure
unless they failed,
that the people of the painted world are not sentient and they don't have a soul, they're not conscious, like then Verso's ending is like, I think clearly the right one. Yeah. And that's why I chose that one the first time I played the game.
Yeah.
But when I revisited the game again and I started listening to people in our Discord and I started seeing more evidence and listening to the other quote from Broche there about like, the fact that it's not meant to be cut and dry like that, right? And I started considering other points of view. It's like, okay, do I get to the ending and am I sure? Am I absolutely certain they're not conscious? Then I'm not sure that I can erase it.
Right.
Right? Like that makes the choice a lot more difficult. But difficult in the sense that, again, you're also not sure the other way. So, you're at this impasse where it's like, I feel like I could be possibly making a really devastatingly wrong choice, like no matter what I do. That's what you should be feeling, not I'm sure I'm making the right choice.
But at the same time, when we first played that game, we kind of rushed through Act 3. We didn't do everything we could have done. We
were trying to beat the
all
game
the dialogue trees.
by the embargo.
Yeah, and so for that reason as well, when you rush through it, you kind of miss stuff. And luckily, it's not just through their interviews that have made us think. It's more actually diving back into the game itself and really reading closely. That's where they succeeded in really making that a big question in the mind.
Yeah. There was one more comment here from Mellybean in our Patreon Discord here. Yeah. This is a sentiment that I had seen elsewhere too. So Mellybean says, do folks ever feel like sometimes in all the discourse about Expedition 33 that the initial feeling you get when going on the expedition gets lost? I can so viscerally remember that I felt like I was part of this expedition when we set sail. But while I love all the story that follows, that Act 1 magic of adventure kind of gets forgotten. And
that's true.
Yeah, it is true. Like, and I've seen other people expressing that and then being disappointed in like where it ends up going. I was so invested in this big adventure into the unknown.
Yeah.
And then like all these reveals happen, and it was like it became about this painter family rather than like the people of Lumiere against the paintress.
Right.
And I was like disappointed in that. I think that what you're saying there like kind of points to that feeling.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, that's a completely valid
it's how I felt too.
Feeling, right?
Yeah. But I wasn't disappointed when it came. I just started feeling weird about it. I think I was texting you too. I was like, I don't know where this is going, and I'm kind of nervous about it. But I want to see it through. We'll see what happens. But it's true. You lose the sense of adventure once you kind of get to the edge of that world.
Yeah.
But that's where the real adventure starts.
Yeah. And my response to that, in terms of my opinion about that, is that's kind of the way most adventure stories are. I mean, probably the most famous fantasy adventure story of all time, well, not of all time, but of our time, is The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically all modern fantasy like sprouted from that. And of course, Tolkien came from the old myths and sort of like, so, he sprouted from them. Modern fantasy sprouted kind of from him. But there's the lyrics, the poem from Bilbo.
Yeah.
What is it exactly? I'm going to butcher.
It's a dangerous business. I know the movie.
There it is.
The
it's
movie
a dangerous
quote,
business,
Frodo, going out your door.
You step onto the road.
And if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. That's that feeling of adventure. There's danger involved in it.
Is the feeling you're describing.
Yes, yeah.
Right? That is like the setting off on an adventure. There's something really exciting and nerve-wracking about you when you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You don't know what's out there. And that's like the spirit of adventure. And
you feel it when they're on that boat and the cameras they're passing the cameras. They're like sailing on towards this place. You feel like pirates. You feel like you're explorers.
Yeah.
It just felt so cool.
And you feel like even in your initial reveals of things, you still feel like, because you haven't put all the pieces together yet. It's like more mysteries and more mysteries and more mysteries. It's like things are being revealed, but it also just makes the mystery bigger. And so like you're just in this space where it's just like, man, the unknown is still out there. But once the unknown starts coming together, like by default, you're going to start losing that feeling. Right. Because that feeling comes from adventuring into the unknown.
Yes.
But as soon as the unknown becomes known, that feeling disappears no matter what that unknown ends up being. Right? As soon as you know it, you lose. And this might be to some degree why you don't necessarily love the endings of games as much as the beginnings of them.
Yeah, I don't love the conclusion to an adventure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That always gets that same feeling. With this game, it's almost like there's still a whole game to continue playing after you have reached the edge of the map. That's not how most games go. But with this one, it's like, no, you go all the way to the end. Now the hard part is actually going back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, that's Well, I would say that's unusual. It's actually not that unusual. For me, I usually don't love beating the final boss because the ending is wrapped up too quickly. There's not a whole adventure getting back home. Right.
Sure.
This game does. This game, the adventure really kicks into gear when you have to now go back home, back to Lumiere, and that's where Renoir is, and that's where the real final boss is back home. It's not where you thought it was. It's not up at the north end of the map. It's back down at the south end where you started. And this kind of harkens to the idea of there and back again. We'll talk about the Hobbit a little more because Bilbo goes to confront the dragon. He has his adventure, all the cool stuff that happens there. And then on his way back, he sings a poem to Gandalf, and it's kind of the roads go ever on kind of poem, under rock or over rock and under tree. And it's a really cool poem. But by the end of it, Gandalf comments and says, Bilbo, you are not the hobbit you once were when you first left the Shire.
Right.
And Bilbo says, well, I suppose adventures will change you. And then they get back to the Shire, and Bilbo, for the next 60 years of his life, he lives an uncomfortable life where the struggle is now fitting back in amongst the common folk who have not had this adventure and the people who think he's weird and he thinks they're silly. And anyways, it's really, there's almost a way, and this is also in Lord of the Rings, when they go back to the Shire, then there's problems at the Shire that they have to now confront. The return journey is as much of a journey because roads go ever on and on. They just keep going. The story doesn't just stop. It reaches a moment where then it continues. And that's how the story of life seems to work. And the movies, I love this. The old 1977 animated version of The Hobbit. I watch that with my kids all the time. They love it. It's really, really good. I really like it. Some people think it's silly. I think it's silly and it's wonderful. Yeah. But there's a line in there at the beginning.
I actually love the depiction of Gollum in that movie.
And his
the
voice
Hobbit
is
movie.
kind of creepy too.
I actually like that depiction of Gollum better than the film trilogy's depiction of Gollum.
He kind of sings a little bit too.
Way creepier.
Yeah. Super creepy. I loved it. But the song that plays in the beginning, the great adventure is waiting for you. So there's a portion of that song where it says, the greatest adventure is what lies ahead, right?
Yes.
That's the whole point of the song. And I remember talking to my kids because I was thinking about this some years ago after we watched it. And I was like, did you know that's always true? At the end of one adventure lies a greater one. Yeah. And I would even, every now and then I'd ask my kids, we'd listen to the song in the car and stuff, and I'd be like, what if you're 95 and you're about to die tomorrow? When is the greatest adventure of your life? Is it what's happened to you, or is it yet still before you? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, the greatest adventure is always what lies ahead, right? There's always one more big adventure that's waiting to happen to you, be it death or not. And I think that's super cool. But that kind of is the idea that even once you finish one adventure, another one's always starting. And I really enjoyed this game, despite the fact that once you kind of figure everything out and the mysteries are gone, I didn't feel deflated. It introduced some new intrigue that kept me curious and that kept me really excited to play the game, despite having completely lost that sense of adventure. But the new adventure is, I don't know, it changed in nature. But it's always there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I would also argue that like the feeling at something like the beginning of The Hobbit and the end of The Hobbit, or the beginning of the Lord of the Rings as like they're setting out versus when returning they come back to the Shire, it's the same as what we're talking about. Like that sense of adventure, that like going into the unknown, is lost in those stories
when you
too.
Return back.
And them coming back, they don't feel like they necessarily belong here anymore. And
Frodo
they've changed, and it's like I don't know if I can like reincorporate myself into my life before, because I'm not the same person I was before.
I think Tolkien himself felt that a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I also would hearken to Peter Pan, the play by Barry, where it's got that line from Peter where Hook is threatening to kill him, and Peter says to die would be an awful great adventure, right?
Yeah,
There's something about that, which is like, even if the concept is coming home, it still has this mystery behind it that leads to a new adventure.
And I think that this game incorporates that with that whole concept of the new beginning.
Yeah.
That
everyone deserves a new beginning.
is seeking, things
Alicia.
like that. But like, I think once you venture into the unknown and you discover it, You can't be the same. You discovered it. You found the truth of what the world's really like or something.
Right.
You can't just like go back and then like head out again and like recapture that feeling because like you've changed in the course of discovering that. And so like, yeah, you can't have the same feeling of like venturing out against the paintress when you know who the paintress really is.
Right.
When you know that the paintress is not really the one gamaging you.
And when you know the real issues behind you.
When you start wondering, wait a minute, am I even a sentient being? Right. The whole nature of my world doesn't even make sense anymore. Like that changes everything about your presumptions when you set out. So like by default, that feeling has to change too. But I would argue that's actually true of almost all adventure stories of this kind. When you return, you're not the same. I would say Odysseus in the Odyssey, the same thing.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely.
Like, the difference between going off to war and wondering what'll happen there to when he comes back and all that he has done and feeling like he has possibly changed it in a way that can't be reversed. And is that a good or bad thing is kind of the question you're meant to grapple with in the story of the Odyssey. Like what he had to sacrifice.
Right.
To come back.
Talk
literally like everything. That's actually a good point. There's a lot of parallels
kind
there,
of relevant,
actually.
Right? He's the only one that makes it back.
In pursuit of seeing again the person you care about the most. What are you willing to sacrifice, right?
That one
Odyssey dives into the exact same types of questions. You're not the same person once you've grappled with those questions and once you've made your choice. Whether you feel good about it or not, you've made that choice and you've had to make the sacrifice one way or the other.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel great about that and about who you are and about any of that, but you will have to live with it.
Right.
Like you will have to say, I made this choice because this is what I felt was ultimately right, and I have to stand by that and deal with the consequences of that now. So if you choose Verso's ending, you have to deal with the consequences in like Renoir's perspective of this little girl who you love, who will probably, I don't want to say probably, it seems.
The game seems to
never recover from this horrible tragic thing that happened to her.
Letting herself be defined by the worst day of their lives, basically. Right. Letting that kind of dictate her path,
And if you choose the other way, you have to grapple with the other consequence, which is this girl is lost to her family. They lose a daughter too. Or maybe if they come back, they're going to ruin the freaking lives of all these people again in an endless cycle of freaking gods just coming in and screwing this up and forcing this little boy Verso to watch his family for all eternity fight each other and never get over the fact that he has died.
Right.
And he has to continually like sit there for however long they decide to go on and on about this and watch them fight over that. And he has to be the one to maintain this world where they fight over that.
I've decided too that part of Verso, it's not just the part of him that loved painting. It is his soul from when he was that age.
Yeah, just his little boy self.
It's and that because he's often not painting, or when you talk to the boy,
he's like around,
and he's just like, places. Man, this is kind of like not what I expected it to be. It's totally he's not just the painter. He's a whole person. He seems to be a whole person.
It's not just the boy who loved painting. It's also the boy who loved trains.
Yes, the boy who loved trains.
It's also the boy who loved playing with his older sister.
Yeah.
It's the boy who loved his mother and father and was conflicted about the fact that he loved music, but they wanted to paint. And he didn't know what to think about that.
Oh my gosh, dude. Okay.
All those things.
I have like 10 guitars in my house, but I've hidden them from the kids for a very long time because the kids aren't always the most careful with these things. But we broke them out a day or two ago.
Nice.
And my kids all want to be musicians now.
There you go.
It's just like, boom, we finally opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
And they're super young, but man.
Well,
what a
everybody.
Great game.
Yes.
I think we're done. Are we finally done?
We are done talking about Expedition 33.
Okay.
At last. It is over. And I just want to leave off by saying, like, I think this is a landmark title.
It's gonna be relevant for years.
I think it's going to be relevant for a long, long time.
Yeah.
It had that kind of impact on me. I think that it is truly extraordinary what this team pulled off. And like with all things, there's going to be controversy around it. Did they use AI when they made it to do art? Did they really do it with a small team, or was it? Is it really indie or not? Do they really deserve that? Yeah. All of these things, that's just human nature. Right. And I'm sure that they weren't perfect in their process. And I'm sure they made mistakes. But that's really like what the whole story is getting at, man, is like human beings make mistakes when they're in pain. And the more in pain they're in, the more likely they are to make mistakes. What is it that SKA says? Never mad.
Yeah.
People do bad things when they're mad.
Right.
That's true of all of us, and we need to be more aware of that all the time. Yeah. And we can really hurt people when we're afraid or when we're mad. And you're hurting each other even when you think you're doing what's best.
Almost
and
always.
So you should focus on healing those parts of yourself that are making you mad or sad or whatever, before you start allowing those things to influence your actions, particularly when it comes to trying to control others. And then you can avoid a lot of the pain that we end up seeing in these endings, which are both bad endings, which are both tragic endings, which are both leave you feeling pretty sucky. And there's not one or the other that's like, that's the correct one.
This also reminds me of like Renoir's journal, where he says that she's abandoned us so that she can go drown alone. The idea that sharing your pain makes it better for everyone. But these are people who are dealing with pain in their own way. They're not sharing the pain. They're stifling it. They're keeping it. They're trying to contain it. And then it comes out in rage and all the other different ways that we see with Renoir and others. But sharing, if these people would share their pain instead of bottle it up, then that also would have helped.
It would go a long way.
There's a lot of lessons we can learn.
I think that's what you're supposed to take from this. Not which ending is the correct one, but like, how can I do better at like not letting my pain drive me to try to control other people, or drive me to try to escape, or drive me to try to avoid, or whatever. How can you truly
or isolate myself? Yeah.
Go through the grieving process in a healthy way that will bond you with your loved ones instead of shattering them? And everybody in this game is grieving in a way that is hurting the people around them.
Right, instead of helping. And how do you grieve in a way that helps? We share each other's pain.
You share pain instead of isolating, or instead of trying to like force people into your way of doing it. Aline, her way of grieving caused a rift between her and her oldest daughter. To the point where her oldest daughter is acting like, oh, I don't really care. Yeah. Like, you can stay in there forever. Right. Because you created a false version of me, some facsimile of me. You'd rather be with that person than me. That's fake me.
Pretty rough.
I don't want... she's just disassociating from her mother altogether. Right, that's how hurt she is by that way that she chooses to deal with her pain. Renoir, of course, feeling like he's losing everybody. His whole freaking family. Clea's over here fighting a war she shouldn't be involved in. And I can't even help her, like, stop that because I got to be in here trying to save my wife from literally dying. Right. And then my daughter's trying to do the same freaking thing. Yeah. Like, what do you people listen to me? But it's the control aspect. He's got to control it. He wants his pain to be over. I'm ready for the pain process to be over. You got to be too. So that we all back to being normal again. And Maëlle it's not just the loss of the brother, it's the loss of her face and her voice and herself, her future as far as she's concerned. And do you just go run away and escape and live a different life where you get to have the life you wanted? Or do you learn how to grieve appropriately and stay grounded and be closer to your loved ones because of it? And I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying that, like, just like do it, guys. Like, it's very, very hard, and it's why they all act the way that they do. And we should be recognizing that that's a human response and having compassion, rather than, pointing fingers and blaming and trying to take from this, how can I do better? That's what I think the game's about.
Sounds
Thanks for watching,
dope.
everybody. Chrono Trigger won. I guess I should have started off with that.
Let's do Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger won the poll. So Chrono Trigger will be the next big game that we cover. Cool. I'm going to be gone for a few weeks. I need to tell you this too. It's not just the 2 weeks now.
There's more?
Like the day after I get home from that trip, I'm going on another trip for a week to Jacksonville for work. All right. So it's essentially going to be 3 weeks that I am gone.
I'll kick it into gear. I'll talk to some people.
It will be a little while before we can get to it because I will not be here for a bit. Lots of like trips and stuff scheduled for me in the coming weeks, but start playing it, right? Revisit it, play it if you haven't played it.
Chrono Trigger.
It was actually kind of a trending topic on X the other day.
Yeah.
There was some guy who, I guess he has some level following or whatever, posted, game's overrated. Not in those words, he elaborated on his reasons, valid reasons for feeling the way he did,
right.
And started a huge fight online about whether Chrono Trigger is outdated and overrated or whether it's the greatest game ever made. So it might be kind of relevant to revisit it and, update your thoughts on that game. I have not played it in quite a while. Gosh, I'm trying to think of the last time I played it. Probably about 10 years ago.
But probably seem no, it's been longer than that because I've never played the DS version. And I've only ever played the SNES version. And it's more like 20 years for me.
Yeah. It's been a very long time. So play the game again or play it for the first time. Give yourself a head start so that you don't get behind when the episodes start releasing and you're like, oh, I can't keep up. I didn't get that far. Just beat it before we start. Then there'll be no spoilers you have to worry about or anything. So you got time is what I'm trying to say. It's probably going to be, more than a month or so before we can actually get onto that. And Kaysen will be doing some episodes in the interim. So look forward to that. And we will talk to you guys soon. Peace out.